First and foremost, people may know that I've been saying the words general strike since 2019, since the racist fear-mongering of that shutdown, where Trump tried to distract us from what was really going on, which was handing more power over to billionaires, trying to privatize all functions of our government, and trying to have us distracted with talk about trying to fund a southern border wall. And all of us were less safe in that moment. And I called on the labor movement to talk about a general strike. But our union was also preparing to strike. We were preparing for a safety strike because every single day that went on, our jobs continued to become less safe. And there was a breaking point there. I also saw this as a moment where labor really needed to stand up and have redemption after our failure to stand with the air traffic controllers in 1981, when Ronald Reagan fired all of them and told corporate America it was open season on unions. It was open season on the strike, made the strike the dirty word. That is why we have seen a 40-year decline in labor. That is why we are in this moment now. Massive inequality. I don't think that we should lose sight of that. We have to recognize that fundamentally, this has been capitalism unchecked at work here. And I want to put this in perspective because people often say, follow the money. Well, yes, follow the money of the private prisons. Watch the Alabama solution. Recognize that there has been slavery going on in this country every single day that it has existed. It has never ended through the prison system. And that now they want to build more private prisons. In fact, in that BBB bill, many of you heard about air travel stopping because the infrastructure of air travel is crumbling, because the staffing is so stretched for air traffic controllers, because the system is no longer working because we haven't invested in it. Well, millions of people use air travel every day. Our U.S. mail is delivered on our airplanes. This is a major form of connectivity for the entire economy, and yet there was 14 times as much money in that bill that went to ICE and building private prisons than there was in rebuilding our crumbling aviation infrastructure. So put that in perspective. Right now, today, there is prison labor working in Burger King and McDonald's, in Walmart, in Home Depot, in Alabama. This is the plan. So we have to be really clear that capitalism has no humanity attached whatsoever. I think it's really important that every single person read Jacobin's article by Alex Press this past week about why unions need to care about this moment and need to make immigration central to the concerns of union members and people who work, because I always say from the beginning of time that the capitalists have used racism and sexism to divide us. Well, they have used immigrants and refugees to try to divide us as well. And what they have done is they have used a different way to hold people down, to say, show me your papers, to say that you're going to be separated from your families, to say that we're going to be able to treat you as something entirely disposable, to try to dehumanize you, to try to make you not seen, and to make it so that you do not feel like you have the right to sign a union card. You don't feel like you have the right to go and talk about your story with the media and draw public attention to the problem, which is so fundamentally at odds with what we need to do in our unions. First and foremost, with the old adage of an injury to one is an injury to all, which is really true. But also that the only way that we can build up power is if we do it collectively. And if one person can be mistreated and can be taken out of that mix, the rest of us are in jeopardy. Even now, as they build up the ranks of ICE, they are giving people jobs. Think about that. They are using money to attract people to this, not just the brutality, not just because someone may be mean-spirited or be inclined to do this, but they're trying to attract people with money to good paying jobs that then will be pitted against the rest of the working class. So it's really important that we understand the social constructs that we're working in, but it's also important, as a union leader myself, I can say right now that we all have to be preparing for a general strike. We all have to be preparing for that strike readiness. That is fundamentally the check on capitalism. The greatest power that we have is our labor. This world doesn't turn without it, but it only matters when we all take that action together. I have more work to do in my own union on this to understand this. And we are starting to see this seep into our airports. We had ICE agents in Minneapolis go onto a Delta plane and demand that a flight attendant help find a passenger that they wanted to take off the plane because that passenger had told them they were shameful. That's why they wanted to take them off the plane, because that passenger had told them they were shameful. This is in all of our workplaces in every single way. This is in our schools, as people have spoken about so clearly. But fundamentally, for the people who are trying to get the tools tonight about what to do next, understand that the only way that we are going to have mass action is if everyone understands what the problem is. And if everyone understands what the demands are about why we're getting into the streets. The people of Minneapolis understand this very well because the fight was brought to their doorstep. It was brought in many cases across the threshold of their doorstep with battering rams, knocking down doors and going into these neighborhoods. The fight was brought to them. They're not even protesters. They're just defending their families, just defending their communities, defending their schools, defending their neighbors, defending the people that they count on to get food from, to fix their homes, to make sure they have internet. This is not, it's not just about protest. It's about the fact that people have no choice but to fight. In 1914, miners went on strike in Ludlow, Colorado. The coal barons were mistreating these miners and treating them as though they were totally disposable, less important than the donkeys that carried the coal out of the mines. And there were 28 languages spoken in this tent camp where the mine workers were striking. And what did the mine workers do? They called out the Colorado National Guard. They recruited people with money to have good jobs to come and enforce peace in these mines, supposedly. This was the narrative. This is the age-old narrative that they spread. And these 28 languages that were spoken were not a barrier to these mine workers talking with each other because they were experiencing what Minneapolis is experiencing today. They were experiencing violence from the state. And in fact, what happened when they tried to organize and bring their demands, the Colorado National Guard turned and shot their leader, and then shot a 12-year-old boy who was trying to go get water, and then opened fire on the entire tent city and then set it afire, killed 25 people. And after that fight, Mother Jones, the great organizer, came there and she said, sure you lost. Sure you lost. Because they had bayonets and all you had was the Constitution. And any competition between bayonets and the Constitution, the bayonets will win every time. But you will fight and lose, you will fight and win, but you must fight. And I want to say that in those days following that, miners came from all over Colorado and defended Ludlow, defended those strikers, helped them bury their dead, helped them mourn, helped them set up a community there, and then went on to fight and build up the strongest union in the country. That was the precursor to the auto workers and the steel workers and the communications workers and the CIO that built up our incredible labor movement that led to a point 20 years later of the onset of the greatest shared prosperity our country has ever experienced because union density was high enough to demand it and hold that kind of power in our politics. Bringing the politics to the people, not partisan, but politics for the people. And so in this moment, as we think about what we have to do to stand up for our safety and security, we have to start with number one, defining the problem. Everyone has to understand the problem. Like I said, the people of Minnesota have learned very quickly. Regular people have learned very quickly what the problem is. There's still too many people who are too comfortable in their daily lives who are not there paying attention enough. And that is why we have to organize. That is why we have to talk about this moment. That is why we have to talk about the fight that is coming to our doorstep all across this country. And we have to organize around that. We have to set our demands. The people of Minnesota have set their demands, and they're very clear about it. It is immediate demands about ICE out and calling on corporations to be Fourth Amendment companies to stand up for their workers. We have to put that pressure on those corporations. This is not about putting pressure on the White House. This is about putting pressure on the people who control our economy. So define the problem, set your demands, back up your demands with what you're willing to do. That is the strike readiness that you're preparing for, and add urgency. And in this moment, there could not be more urgency. So we stand with you, and we are preparing and having those conversations in our union about how to shut it down, how to not participate in a system that is dehumanizing people, that is trying to extract more profit from our labor, that is trying to make our world even worse, but to actually turn that power into something where we can build the world that we want to live in and the America that it ought to be, as Dr. King said.